Hello and welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel, brought to you by Red Heart Yarns. In this video, I will show you how to make the beautiful Kaleidoscope shawl. This is a very easy shawl and it is made up using 3 balls of the beautiful Red Heart Unforgettable yarn. What's great about the combination of this yarn and this shawl is the yarn does a lot of the work for you because it does the color changes on their own, and they're long color changes. So you're not going to get a muddy mess of just variegated. It's going to look like you've put in a lot of extra work into this shawl, but it's going to be minimal effort. This is a free pattern available over on redheart.com. I'll put a link to the pattern and a list of the materials right down there in the video description box below this video. While you're down there, go ahead and smash that like button, as my kids say. Now, as we make this shawl pattern, I'm going to walk you through the entire set of repeats, and then you will be left on your own to finish the shawl. What's really great is with my help, you'll be able to complete this shawl with no problem. Now go ahead, get your pattern, gather your materials, join me back here, and let's jump in and make this spectacular Kaleidoscope shawl. I am as excited to make this shawl as you are. Ever since I saw it released on the Red Heart website, I was saying to myself, I've got to make that shawl. I have my ball of yarn ready to go. Let's jump in. As you take a look down here at the Red Heart Unforgettable yarn, I want to remind you that when you're dealing with balls of yarn like this, you want to pull from the outside. So go ahead and remove your wrapper, set it aside, and then find the outside strand of your skein of your ball of yarn. What this does is it allows the yarn to not break because this is a lightly spun acrylic yarn, and so it just makes it easier for it to use. And it's not wound in such a way that it's meant to be a center pull ball, so always pull from the outside. With your size H crochet hook, or whatever size you need to use to get gauge, which is not super important for a shawl pattern, let's go ahead and we are going to create an adjustable ring. To create an adjustable ring, put the tail of your yarn in the palm of your hand, wrap the yarn around your forefinger and middle finger, and when you come back up, cross over. When you cross over, go ahead and turn your hand over, grab that back loop and pull it up to the front loop, but don't let this hole that your 2 fingers are in collapse, okay? So I'm just going to kind of pinch that hole open, all right? What I'm going to do now is with that loop that's now on my hook, I will go ahead and complete the stitches as they're indicated. So what I'm going to do here is I will chain 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And this counts as a double crochet and a chain 1. So I will grab a stitch marker and I will place it in the 3rd chain that I just did. Okay? So that just lets me know that it's a double crochet and a chain 1. I put it into the 3rd chain, and then I will go ahead and I will do 3 double crochets all into this space that I've left open, okay? So I'm going to put my hook into this big space where my fingers were, and I will do a total of 3 double crochets. So there's 1, 2, 3. Now I will chain 2, and then I will do 3 double crochets again into this big hole or this big space. So there's 1, 2, 3. Now I chain 1 and I do a double crochet into this space. All right, now that might look really funny there, right? Because we have this big hole here, but I want you to watch. This is what's really great about the magic adjustable ring. Okay, ready? So I'm going to take my tail here and holding on to my stitches I just made, I'm going to pull my tail. And what that's going to do is going to cinch up closed that beginning hole, and now I have a really nice beginning to my shawl. Because this part that we are starting at right here is actually the center top of the shawl. It's the part that would lay on the back of your neck, and we will build the shawl out from this point. Pretty cool, right? All right, you've completed row 1. Woohoo! Let's move on to row 2. The first thing we'll want to do for row 2 is go ahead and turn our work. So we're going to be working back along all of those stitches we just created. Let's go ahead and chain 4. And once again, I will use another stitch marker and I will put it into the third chain that I just did. Okay? Once I've done my chain 4, I then will do 3 double crochets in the first chain space. So this is my 1 chain space right here. So I will put 3 double crochets right there. So there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, notice I went all into that space. I didn't go into an actual chain. I just went into that big space. So make it really easy for yourself and just go into the space. Now the next part of the instructions say to do 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets into the next chain 2 space. So we will skip all of those stitches there, come all the way up here to this chain 2 space, and we will do 3 double crochet, and then we will chain 2, and then do 3 double crochet into that same space again. If you're looking at your pattern, you'll notice that those instructions, the 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochets, are all in parentheses. That's an indicator that everything that's within that parentheses, you will be doing into 1 stitch, okay? So whenever you come across that in the pattern, that's what that means. Once again, in the pattern, it has parentheses and it says 3 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet in the next chain 1 space. So remember down here where I marked this, I marked the third chain and then the chain 1 because that counted as a double crochet in a chain 1. This is my chain 1 space, okay? So I'm going to come all the way down here. I'm not going in the marked stitch. I'm going to that whole space, and I will do everything that's within those parentheses. So I will do 3 double crochet, and then chain 1, and do a double crochet again. That completes my row. You see that? See how cool that is? You've completed 2 rows. Let's move on to row 3. Your shawl is really starting to take shape. For row 3, we go ahead and begin by turning, and we will chain 4. Once again, this counts as a double crochet and a chain 1. So I could go ahead and carry up my stitch marker just to keep things consistent, okay? If you have decided that you don't want to use a stitch marker, that's absolutely fine, but I find that it's really helpful to maintain your placement on the shawl. So I've chained 4, I've moved up my stitch marker. Now I'll do 3 double crochet in the first chain 1 space, so right here. Let's do 3 double crochet. Now I'll do 3 double crochet between the next 2 shells. So these shells are these 3 double crochets right here. So between these 2 shells into this little section right there, you see that? I will do 3 double crochets. It's just in that large space between those 2 shells. So now I just did that. We've come up to parentheses again, so everything that's within that parentheses, we will be doing that in the next stitch or space indicated. The parentheses say to do the 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets into the next chain 2 space. So all the way up here at this point, we will be doing all of those instructions. As you get going along, you're going to realize that this chain 2 space that I'm working into now, this is the center point of the shawl. This is the center of the shawl that we are creating. So every time we get to the center of the shawl, we essentially have to turn the corner. So that's why we have to do all of these stitches into the 1 stitch. It allows us to turn the corner of this actual shawl. So as you take a look down here, you can see I've done 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles, all into the chain 2 space, and that is the center of our shawl beginning to get formed. Now that we've formed the center, we will go ahead and do the next part of the instructions, which say to do the 3 double crochets between these 2 shells. So it's into that large space right there. We will put 3 double crochets. And now the last part of the instructions has us put a double crochet or 3 double crochets, chain 1, double crochet over here into this chain 1 space. So I will do 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then 1 more double crochet. Right now, this is what your piece should be looking like. It's starting to really take some shape, and we're ready to move on to the next row. For row 4, we begin by turning our work, and it's going to be very similar to the previous row we did, only now we have more shells to work into the spaces between. So I've chained 4. I can go ahead and move up my marker, so that way I just know where my placement is. Again, if you don't want to use a marker, you absolutely don't have to. It just makes it easier for placement-wise for me. Okay? Now I will go ahead, I will put 3 double crochets into this chain 1 space. And now we're coming up to a part of the instructions that's new. We're seeing a bracket. When you come up to a bracket in a pattern, what that means is everything that's going to be within that bracket is going to be done a multiple of times. And usually that multiple will be given outside the ending bracket. So as we're looking at this pattern, it's 3 double crochets between the next 2 shells, end bracket, twice. So everything that's in that bracket we'll now do 2 times. So we're going to put 3 double crochets in between these 2 shells, and that'll be once. And then we'll put 3 double crochets between those 2 shells, and that'll be our twice. See, not only are you learning how to make a shawl, but you're learning how to read a pattern, which will help you in the long run. It's so much more than just making a shawl. That's the first 3 double crochets. Now I will come over here to the next space between these 2 shells and put 3 double crochets there. Again, I'm just working into this large space. There's not a stitch there for me to work into. I just want this really nice large space. Now that I've done that twice, we're back to where there's parentheses, and we know that everything that is within those parentheses we will do in the next stitch or space as indicated. So the parentheses have us do 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets into our chain 2 spot. So it's the top center, or it's the center point of our shawl. All right, so this is where we're going to turn a corner, remember? So we do our 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then 3 double crochets into that same chain 2 space. And this allows us to nicely turn this corner here, or turn this edge, to be able to work down this side of the shawl. Now, you'll see that there's brackets again. You already know what to do there, but I'm going to go ahead and help you along. Everything that is within the bracket, you will do the multiple of times as indicated outside of the bracket. So for this example, we have a shell here and a shell here. We're supposed to do 3 double crochets between those 2, and then we'll do 3 double crochets between those 2. So we'll do 3 doubles right here. And now we'll do 3 doubles right here. And that will be everything that is within the bracket done twice. We come upon parentheses, and the parentheses want us to do 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 1 double crochet into this chain 1 space, just like we've been doing all along. So we will go ahead and do that. Oops, as I lose my hook here. There's my third, geez Louise, third double, chain 1, and do 1 more double. This is what your shawl looks like at this point. Row 5 is just like the previous row, only now, instead of doing the stuff within the brackets twice, my bet is if we take a look, we'll have to do it 3 times because we have one more extra shell now that we need to work between. So let's go ahead, turn our work. We will do our chain 4, work our 3 double crochets into the first chain 1 spot. Now we have a bracket and it has 3 double crochets between the next 2 shells 3 times. See, it's not too hard to think about what's happening once you understand what's being done. So let's go ahead and work our 3 double crochets between our shells a total of 3 times. So there's 3 doubles between those 2. Now let's do 3 doubles between these 2. And then we'll do 3 doubles between these 2. Once we've done that, we come to the instructions where they have us do stuff within the parentheses. Once again, we're going to, in this chain 2 space, work 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then work 3 double crochets, all into that same chain 2 space. We're now working along the other side of the shawl, and we have the bracket again, and we know that we are going to do 3 double crochets between these first 2 shells, 3 double crochets between the next 2 shells, and then 3 double crochets in the next 2, between the next 2, I should say. Now we have a parenthesis again, and we know in this chain 1 space, we will do 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then 1 double crochet, all into that chain 1 space. By this point, this is what your shawl looks like, and you've completed the setup shell mesh. Let's move on to the next step. All right, we're on to the next set of instructions, which are the box mesh. So let's jump in to row 6. First of all, you will go ahead and turn your work, and we begin with the chain 4. You can go ahead and move your marker up to that chain 3 spot just to be consistent. Now the instructions have us start a little bit differently than we've been doing before. This time, the instructions want us to put 1 double crochet into this chain 1 space. Now we chain 1, and working into the center of this shell, so we have 3 double crochets in this shell, so we're going to work into the center double crochet. We will put 1 double crochet. Now we'll chain 1. Now, working between the 2 shells into that space right there, we will put a double crochet right there. Chain 1. Now we're double crochet into the center of the next shell. So there's 3 double crochets there. You want to work into the center one and place a double crochet. You'll notice in the pattern that this is where it says to repeat from star. So you will go back to earlier in the pattern where the star is, and you will begin to work your repeat. We will do this repeat until we get to this chain 2 space down here at the center. So the repeat is chain 1, double crochet between these 2 shells, chain 1, double crochet in the center of the next shell, chain 1, double crochet between these 2 shells, chain 1, double crochet in the center of the next shell, chain 1, double crochet between these two shells, chain 1, double crochet in the center of the next shell. That brings us to our chain 2 space. The pattern now wants us to do a chain 1, and then we'll do a V-stitch into this space. And the V-stitch for this pattern is a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. And all of that has gone into our center space. So that there has allowed us to turn the corner. Now we're going to begin working along this side. So you will chain 1, double crochet in the center, double crochet of the shell, chain 1, double crochet in that space between the shells, chain 1, double crochet in the center of the next shell, chain 1, double crochet between the shells, chain 1, double crochet in the center, chain 1, double crochet between the two shells, chain 1, double crochet in the center, chain 1, double crochet between the shells, chain 1, double crochet in the center, and you finish with a chain 1, and then you will double crochet, chain 1, double crochet all into that chain 1 space. So now this is what your work looks like after row 6. Let's move on to row 7. Row 7 has us begin by turning our work and working a chain 4. Now you can go ahead and continue moving on with your stitch marker if you choose. I'm going to go ahead and remove mine at this point because I feel like I'm in a good rhythm, so I don't need it anymore. Now that I've chained 4, I will double crochet into this first stitch. Now this is different than what we've done before. I'm working into the actual stitch right here and doing a double crochet. Now you'll notice in the pattern, this is the start of our star. So from this point, this is where our repeat is going to begin, okay? Just want to point that out real quick. Now we'll go ahead, we'll chain 1, we'll double crochet in the next double crochet, and we repeat. So we chain 1, double crochet in the next double crochet, repeat, chain 1, double crochet in the next double crochet, chain 1, so on and so forth until I get to the chain 2 space, which is the center of the shawl. Now that I'm at my chain 2 space, I've gone ahead and I've worked into the double crochet that was part of my V-stitch before, but now I need to work my next part of the instructions, which is chain 1, do a V-stitch in the chain 2 space, so remember that's a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet. Okay, so that's my V-stitch, and now I go ahead and I repeat again. So I would chain 1, double crochet in the next double crochet, which, just so you guys know, that's the other half of the V-stitch from the previous row. And then I continue on all the way down till I get to the end. As I finish the last double crochet into the final double crochet here, I'm at the end of my repeat, so I chain 1, and I will work a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet all into this final chain 1 space. Okay, so all of that down there. I'm going to go ahead and remove my marker over here just like I did the opposite side. And right here, this is what you have after row 7. And you can go ahead and count your double crochets. You should have a total of 28 at this point. Let's go ahead and work row 8. So I will turn my work and I will chain 4. Once I've chained 4, I will put a double crochet into this first stitch, okay? I'm not going into the space, I'm going to the actual stitch and place a double crochet there. I will chain 1 and double crochet in my next double crochet. And this is my repeat. Once again, we will chain 1, double crochet in the next double crochet. Chain 1, double crochet in the next double crochet. And we'll do this all the way down to our chain 2 space where we will do our V-stitch once again. So this is very similar to what we did on the previous row, only now we have more double crochets to work into. All right, I'm coming up to my last double crochet before my chain 2 space, and I will go ahead, chain 1, and then do my V-stitch into my chain 2 space. Remember, the V-stitch is a double, chain 2, and a double all into that chain 2 space. And then I will repeat. So I chain 1, do a double crochet in the next double crochet, and then do this all the way down to the end of my row. At the end of my row, I finish off with a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the final chain 1 space. Okay? Here is the final double crochet of this row. So I do my chain 1 and work my double crochet. Get some yarn here. Chain 1 and then double crochet all into that big space right there. And there I have it. I'm at the end of row 8. I should have a total of 32 double crochets, and so should you. So let's move on to row 9. All right, so we will turn our work and we begin row 9 just like we have been doing this entire section. And row 9 is just like the previous rows we've been doing. But because I said I was going to walk through all of this with you, I will go ahead and do that. I start off with my double crochet into my first stitch there. Chain 1, double crochet into the next double crochet, and then that's my repeat until I get to my chain 2 space where I will do chain 1, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet into the chain 2 space, turn the corner, and then work my repeat again. So this is really simple. This entire section is just really building this box mesh where we're putting double crochets on top of double crochets. This is also sometimes called filet crochet, so you could think of it, if you're familiar with that, you could think of it that way. But what we are doing is we're increasing by 4 double crochets with each row. So by the time I get to the end of this row, I will have 36 double crochets, and then by the time I get to the end of my row 10, I will have 40 double crochets. But it's all created just like this. And what's really awesome is this allows the yarn to really bloom, to blossom a little bit. We get some height with the stitches, and it allows the colors to really take action and pop off of the fabric a little bit more. It also will give it a nice lace look of the shawl. I'm coming up to my final double crochet before my chain 2 space, and I will chain 1, work my V-stitch into the space, and then chain 1 and do a double crochet into the next double crochet and continue on down this side of the shawl. If you're like me, as you pull from the outside of the ball, sometimes you'll get a big clump that comes off of the ball. Totally fine, perfectly natural. Just make sure as you're working along it doesn't get stuck on you. It'll kind of see it creeping up here on me as I'm working through the video. I'm going to get through this row and then get through row 10 with you, and we'll move on to the next step. Can you believe that you're already working on this shawl so quickly and it's really starting to take shape, and it's really not that difficult, is it? Just working some really basic double crochet stitches. You've got this. You could do this, no problem. As I come up to my final double crochet into a double crochet here, I want to remind you that you finish off by chaining 1 and then working a double and a chain 1 and a double all into that large space right there, okay? So that's the end of row 9, and row 10 is done just like this, and at the end of row 10, as I mentioned, we'll have 40 double crochets. So let's go ahead and jump into row 10 by turning our work, doing our 4 chains. Remember that counts as a double crochet and a chain 1, and then we'll put our first double crochet into that first stitch there, and then we jump into our repeat. So we chain 1, do a double crochet in the next double crochet, chain 1, and so on and so forth until I get down to the V stitch, which I will put in the chain 2 part of my shawl. So let's get down there so you can see that one more time. I'm down here to the last double crochet before I do my V stitch. So I chain 1, make sure you do your V stitch into that chain 2 space, which is a double crochet, chain 2, and then a double crochet all into that space. Then you chain 1 and you work your repeat by putting the double crochet in the next double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the next double crochet, so on and so forth until I get to the end of this row. All right, I'm coming up to the last double crochet that I work into, and then I chain 1, and remember to put a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet all into that space. At this point, this is what your shawl looks like through row 10 right here. Look how pretty that is. Oh my gosh. And we will move on to the next set of instructions, which is the shell mesh. So here we go. We're going to learn something a little bit new. Let's dive in. Now let's learn the shell mesh and get going on this shawl a little bit more. We will go ahead and turn our work, and we're beginning row 11, and we start off just like before with our chain 4. Now the instructions say to do 3 double crochets in the first chain space. So we will do 3 double crochets in this first chain space. So we will do 1, 2, and 3. Now you'll notice in the instructions we are back to where we have brackets. So everything that we will see within those brackets we will do for the multiple of times that's written outside of the bracket. So inside the bracket it says skip the next chain space. So we will skip the next chain space and we will put 3 double crochets in the next chain space. And that's the end of the bracket, and it says 9 times. So if we have done that once, we need to do that 9 more times. So we will skip the next chain space and do 3 double crochets in the following one. Remember, these 3 double crochets are what the designer calls the shells. Okay, skip one, do 3 double crochets in the next one. You can see my yarn is creeping up on me. It's time for me to grab some more. I want to remind you that there is no chain 1 between these shells. So make sure you're literally just going from one 3 double crochet to the next 3 double crochet, or one shell to the next shell, okay? So we will come here, skip 1 chain 1 space, go to the next and do 3 shells. Skip 1, come to the next, do 3 shells. I'm down here where I'm going to be doing one right here before my chain 2 space. And once I get this one done, I'm going to go back and count just to make sure I have a total of 9 of those completed. All right, so this was the one before we started our repeat. So then here was our first repeat. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's perfect. That's exactly where we want to be. And now we're to the center of our shawl where we will be going back to turning that corner with 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, all into that chain 2 space. So let's go ahead and work into this chain 2 space right there with our 3 double crochets. Chain 2, and then 3 double crochets. Once you've completed that, you will turn this corner just like before. We will put 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space. and we have a bracket again. So we will skip this chain 1 space, come to the next, and do 3 double crochets. Continue this down the row, and at the end of the row we will finish off just slightly different. So let's get down there now. Okay, I'm doing my last 3 double crochets, and when I skip 1 chain, I'm going to come over here, and this is where I'm finishing off. So I will do 3 double crochets, and that will be the end of my 9 times, okay? So doing that down here, that'll be the end of my 9 times. Then I chain 1 and I double crochet 1 more time into that space. And that's how you will end your row 11, and you should have a total of 22 shells. Okay, and I want to remind you the shells are these 3 double crochets, okay? So this is what we have right now at the end of row 11. So pretty. Let's move on to row 12. We go ahead and turn our work to begin row 12, and we start off with a chain 4. Now what's great is we're going to work shells all the way down this row, but no longer do we have to skip chain 1 spaces because we don't have any anymore, right? What we will end up doing is working double crochets between those shells that are already created, just like we started this entire shawl. To begin, we will put 3 double crochets right here into this chain 1 space, okay? So let's do our 3 double crochets right there. And now we will do 3 double crochets between the next 2 shells. And you'll notice that's the repeat. So we'll do that all the way down until we get to the chain 2 center, where we will do the 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, all in the center. Let's work down to that point. I am to my center point. Right here is my chain 2 space. So I will go ahead and work my 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then 3 double crochets all into that space. Again, this helps us turn the corner and keep a nice point to our shawl. Now I will carry on and working between the shells. Keep on doing those 3 double crochets between the shells all the way down the row. I'm at the last 3 double crochets, and I'm here to this chain 1 space, and in that chain 1 space I will do 3 double crochets, a chain 1, and then 1 double crochet, and it's all going into that large space, chain 1, and then 1 double crochet. Okay, so that's the end of my row 12, and it looks a little something like this. It's really starting to take shape. It looks really pretty. I hope that you have liked it so far to this point. Let's move on to row 13, where you're going to find it very familiar. Row 13 has us begin with turning our work and chaining 4. Now, just like in row 12, we will begin by putting 3 double crochets into this first chain 1 space, and then we are going to work 3 double crochets between the shells all the way down to our center chain 2, where we will do our 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, and do the same thing all the way down this edge. Remember, you want to make sure you're putting your 3 double crochets between the 2 shells all the way down the row. And make sure that when you get to that chain 2 section that you do the 3 double crochets, the chain 2, and the 3 double crochets. That way it turns the corner nice and neat. You do the same thing for row 14 and 15 also. So let's go ahead, get finished with row 13, 14, and 15 because you know how to do them. And join me back here and I'll talk you through the rest of the pattern. Okay? You've made it through rows 1 through 15 and your shawl is really starting to look like a little shawl, isn't it? The really fantastic part about this particular shawl pattern is now that you know everything you need to know in order to make the body of this shawl. Now that you have worked rows 1 through 15, The next section is working rows 6 through 15 3 more times. Then you're going to work rows 6 through 10 one time. What that means is we're going to have different sections separated by the box mesh and the shell mesh, and you will end with a box mesh. When you end on the box mesh, you will then do a picot shell row, and that's going to go around the edging of your shawl. And then you have one last step, which is the shoulder edging, and that will be worked right up here along this edge of the shawl. After you've done that, you would weave in your ends and just block out your piece as desired. So let's do this right now. What you need to do from this point on, yours looks a little bit something like this, right? Isn't this beautiful? You need to repeat rows 6 through 15 3 times, then repeat rows 6 through 10 once. Join me back here and we will learn how to do the picot shell edge. What a beautiful shawl you're making. Isn't the color of the yarn just absolutely amazing when combined with these stitches you've been doing? By this point, you have done the repeat of row 6 through 15 3 times and row 6 through 10 once. And it's time to do the picot shell row. So let's go ahead and do that now. I am going to go ahead and turn my work here. And it is time to jump in to the picot shell row. So let's start off with our chain 4. And we will put a double crochet picot, double crochet in the first chain 1 space. Now the double crochet picot instructions are written on the first page of the pattern in the special stitches section. But let me show you how to do that here. So all of those instructions that I just read are in parentheses, and we're going to place those all right here in this first chain 1 space. So we will start off with a double crochet. Now we have to do the double crochet picot, which starts off with a double crochet, then another double crochet, chain 3, and then slip stitch back into the double crochet you just made. So I'm coming back here, just going into the top of that stitch, and I'm working a slip stitch. Then the rest of the parenthesis has us do a double crochet on the other side. So by the time that's complete, that's what your edge is looking like so far. Now, here is the full repeat. Are you ready? Just like when we were doing the shell mesh, we're going to do something very similar on this row. So this is very similar to row 11, okay? We are going to skip 1 chain space, and in the next one, we will do everything in the parentheses again. So the double crochet, and then we do the double crochet picot, which has us do 2 double crochets, chain 3, and then slip stitch back into the double crochet you just created. And then we end with a double crochet. We'll repeat that all the way to the chain 2 space at the center of the shawl. So you skip 1 chain 1 space, go to the next, work a double, then work your double crochet picot, and don't forget to put 1 last double crochet in that same space. I'm going to work this all the way down to my center chain 2 space where I will have to turn the corner, but this time we're going to do a couple of double crochet picots as we turn the corner. I have reached my chain 2 space right here. I just finished, so here's my chain 2 space, which is the center of my shawl, and I am going to turn the corner. And I will do that by working exactly what we've been doing into this chain 1 space, and then I will chain 2 and do it all again in that same chain 2 space. And that will allow us to turn the corner and then do the same thing on the opposite side. So let's do that together. I will go ahead, work my double crochet, and then work my double crochet picot, finish that off with another double crochet. Now here's where I will chain 2, and that helps me to turn the corner. And now I will do all of that again into the same stitch. So I will work a double crochet, double crochet picot, and then finish up with a double crochet. Now I carry on working along this side of the shawl, and the first set of the instructions say to go ahead and do the double crochet picot, double crochet into the next chain 1 space. Okay, so this is the next chain 1 space. So I will do all of that right here. Let's finish my picot and then do my last double crochet. And then I will repeat once again. I'll skip 1 space and then do all that again over here in this next space. And I will do that all the way up this side of the shawl, and I will end with a chain 1 and a double crochet in the last chain space. Once I've done that, I will end with a chain 1 and a double crochet in the last chain 1 space. I do not turn my work at that point. What I'm going to do is work along the shoulder edge with the yarn that's still attached, so you won't fasten off. Once you complete that last chain 1 and double crochet, go ahead and rotate your work so that way you're working along this long edge of your shawl. What we're going to do is single crochet evenly along this edge. The designer has given you specifically how many single crochets you should put in each double crochet edge, or if you want to make it so that it's evenly distributed by your eye, you can absolutely do that too. My ultimate reason of giving you all this information here is to tell you that if you are off 1 or 2 stitches or even 5 stitches, it's not going to matter so much as long as your shawl lays flat. This is just one of those finishing touches. So the designer wants us to go ahead and in each one of the double crochets, remember those chain 4s count as double crochets, you will put 2 single crochet. And you'll do this all the way to the adjustable ring. Once you get to the adjustable ring, you will put 1 single crochet in the ring, and then you'll go to the opposite side of the ring and work single crochets, 2 single crochets in the edge of each row, so each double crochet all the way along there. Once you're done, you will fasten off your work and finish it off. Once you're complete, your shawl looks a little something like this, with this beautiful body stitch working all the way down, and then the beautiful picot double crochet down here at the edge and at the very bottom. This shawl is long enough to either wear over your shoulders or kerchief style as shown on the model in the picture earlier. I hope you have enjoyed this time with me making your very own Kaleidoscope shawl, and you've enjoyed the time you've spent working with Red Heart Unforgettable yarn. Don't forget that this yarn and the pattern are both available over at redheart.com. A link to both of them is provided in the video description box right down there below. And while you're down there, please smash that like button. If you make this shawl, please share with me on social media. Use hashtag MarleyBird, and I'll make sure that I find your project and smash your like button as well. My name's Marley Bird, and I'm the proud spokesperson of Red Heart Yarns. Thank you so much. Bye! Everything you need to know about knitting or crochet can be found right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Learn with Marley Bird. Visit youtube.com/Marley Bird.